Yo ho everybody, and welcome to another edition of Yinzer on Hockey. Before we begin, make sure you go down and hit that like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and stay up to date on all the latest off-season goings-ons of the NHL, as we will be uploading videos similar to this, resetting all the teams in the off-season, talking about trade speculations and draft, and covering the draft and everything with some regularity. So be sure to make sure you hit the subscribe and click the little bell next to it to stay up to date. So today we are going to be taking a look at the Metropolitan division in the NHL. With the regular season, Metropolitan, Washington won the division with 105 points. Pittsburgh was second with 100, and Philadelphia with 98. Columbus and New Jersey also made the playoffs with 97 points each, and rounded it out with Carolina at 83. The Islanders with 80, and the Rangers with 77 points for the season. And it's weird how the Metro played out, because there was a point around like early February, late January, early February, where all 8 of these teams were battling neck and neck, and from one day to the next, you didn't know which team was going to make the playoffs and which team wasn't. They all 8 of them had a legitimate shot at making the playoffs until the trade deadline. And then the Rangers made their intent very clear that they were going to begin their rebuild process. And the Islanders, their defense just kind of fell apart. Goaltending let them down. Carolina was in the hunt for the longest time, but then they just kind of fizzled out after the sell of the team was complete. And you can see them going in a different direction once that all happened. But the other 5 teams all made the playoffs, made a mild impact. Columbus had a 2-0 lead on Washington in the first round and looked like they were gonna upset the Capitals. And New Jersey played a very competitive series with Tampa in the first round, and the Philly-Pittsburgh series was a very entertaining series, especially if you liked high-scoring games and liked offensive output, because that series had a lot of offensive output. So taking a look at the teams here in their current situations for the upcoming season, we'll start with the Washington Capitals. Currently, they have, looks like about 9 forwards under contract and a few notable free agents that they're going to have to address. On the forward side, the most notable is Jay Beagle, 32 years old, center iceman. He is an unrestricted free agent this year, as well as Tom Wilson, right winger, played first line minutes. He is a restricted free agent, so I look for him to be tendered an offer, and he'll probably re-sign, but where they are from a cap standpoint, they're going to have to prioritize how they address these free agents, because they were very tight up against the cap. Of course, the cap is going to go up. There's speculation that the cap's going to land between 78 and 82 million, which will be anywhere from a $3 to $7 million increase in cap for the upcoming season. So Jay Beagle and Tom Wilson are the 2 notable free agents. Devontae Smith-Pelly, as well as a restricted free agent, versatility of playing on either wing, and he could fit a lot of teams for the grit and his physicality that he brings. I look for him to probably not re-sign with Washington, just because of the increased value that you gain when you win a Stanley Cup championship. You gain a lot of value that other teams put a higher price tag on players that won the Stanley Cup. If you look at over the past couple of years, Nick Bonino leaving the Penguins and getting a big contract with Nashville, and Chris Kunitz and them bringing his veteran leadership down to Tampa, all things like that, where guys that win Stanley Cups just get big pay increases over somebody of equal, comparable stats and abilities. The Stanley Cup just kind of puts them a little bit above them on that, and I think that's what you'll see with Devontae Smith-Pelly. He's going to get a reasonable raise to play probably third-line minutes for a team that's looking for that physicality in their bottom six and the versatility of playing on either wing. The defensive core is where things get a little bit more interesting for the Washington Capitals. They have John Carlson, who was their number one defenseman, unrestricted free agent, 28 years old, right-handed defenseman. Played a lot of big minutes through this playoffs, and he is going to be looking to cash in. This is a guy who's probably going to end up in the $8.5 to $9 million a year salary range with his age, his experience, and now the Stanley Cup. Plays all three facets of the game, plays power play minutes, plays penalty kill minutes, as well as even strength. He's a guy that's just going to be looking to get a big payday, and I don't know if Washington's going to be able to maneuver the salaries around to get him signed prior to him landing on the open market. I think if he lands on the open market, it's going to be a bidding war, and Washington just does not have the salary cap space to get into a bidding war. Michael Kempny as well, left-handed defenseman, was playing on their second pair a lot of the time through the playoffs, third pairing through a lot of the regular season. I think he's a guy who is also an unrestricted free agent. He's going to garner some attention, but I think inevitably Michael Kempny will probably stay with the Washington Capitals at the right price. Next up, we'll take a look at the goaltending situation real quick. Philip Grubauer is a restricted free agent. Braden Holtby signed for 2 more years, eligible to negotiate an extension next offseason. So he's a $6.1 million cap hit right now. Philip Grubauer, as a restricted free agent, kind of proved that he's capable of playing a number one goaltender's role. And there's a lot of teams that have a need for a number one goaltender. I mean, you don't even have to look outside the division to understand that there's a few teams who need a number one goaltender right now. Philly is one that comes to mind that could possibly use an upgrade at goaltender, even though they have Carter Hart in the wings waiting. You look at the New York Islanders are in severe need of solidifying their goaltending situation with a number one goaltender, as well as solidifying their defense. But we'll talk about that shortly. Let's go ahead and move on to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Pittsburgh Penguins, the big three are locked up long term. Each of them signed through, at a minimum, 2021-22 season. And that's, of course, Malkin, Crosby, and Kessel. Patrick Hornquist also signed a long-term extension. For the forward group of the Penguins, Carter Rowney is the only unrestricted free agent we have in our forward group this year, and actually the only unrestricted free agent that the Penguins have on their entire active roster this year. So he's a guy they probably... I mean, he's a guy you like for your fourth line. He plays wing, he plays center. He's got some versatility, but just a relatively easily replaceable guy, and, you know, probably somebody that you probably move on from depending on what the price tag he's asking for is. Tom Kuhnhackl, Brian Rust, Dominic Simone, and Riley Sheehan are restricted free agents. I love Kuhnhackl's grit. I like what he brings to this team, and I would love to see him back in a Penguins uniform again next year. And I think if the price is right, they're definitely going to consider it. But the big one here is Brian Rust. Brian Rust has always shown up and performed in a big way in the playoffs, specifically elimination games and Game 7s. He's always had a knack for scoring big goals at big moments, and I think that he's a guy... If you look at somebody similar, even on the Penguins roster, someone like a Connor Sherry who has a $3 million cap hit, I think Brian Rust plays with more consistency. I think he's a better skater, as well as a little bit more hockey intelligent. His hockey IQ is a bit higher, so I'm looking for Brian Rust to be in the $4 to $4.5 million range. You know, someone, you know, equal to like a Carl Hagelin. Which, if I'm pegging trade candidates for the Penguins, I think Carl Hagelin is one guy that you need to possibly consider as a trade candidate. Excuse me. On the defensive side, we have Chris Letang, $7.25 million cap hit for the next 4 years. Schultz and Dumoulin signed up for the next few years, and Matt Hunwick is signed for a couple of years to a bad contract. I mean, there's no other way to put this. You don't pay $2.5 million to a seventh defenseman, to a guy that doesn't dress. It's just a bad contract. We have Jamie Oleksiak, who is a restricted free agent, who pretty much come in and took over for Matt Hunwick early in the season. I think the trade was in December. We brought him over from the Dallas Stars. He played a lot of critical minutes for us, great on the penalty kill, real gritty defenseman, real physical. I like the way he plays. He's a guy that I'm looking probably, I would say he's looking close to $3 million. If you're paying Matt Hunwick $2.25, then obviously if Jamie Oleksiak wanted to argue for $3 million, you would have a hard time arguing, even though he's a third pair defenseman. At best, just the role that he plays, and that's a tough spot for the Penguins to deal with. This offseason isn't going to be as critical for the Penguins. Next year is when they have a lot of things to address, with Zach Aston Reese coming up on contract due, Jake Gensel, who's currently making $735,000. This guy is going to get the raise of all raises. He's probably going to be $5.5-6 million a year if he performs like he did in the playoffs this year through next season. And if he plays on the line with Sidney Crosby, it's hard to imagine him scoring less than 75 points next season. Goaltending situation pretty solidified. We got Matt Murray for the next 2 years before he becomes a restricted free agent. Then obviously with his 2 Stanley Cup championships, he's going to be due for a big raise. Casey DeSmith signed for another year before he can become an unrestricted free agent. We still have Tristan Jarry waiting down in the AHL, who is probably going to get some time. And I'm not going to go over the prospects and stuff with this video. We'll talk more about that in the future. Moving on to the Philadelphia Flyers. We might have to break this into a 2-part video. It's starting to get pretty long, but we'll look at that. Philadelphia Flyers, notable forwards for them, Matt Reed, Valtteri Filppula is their 2 big unrestricted free agents. Neither of them are critical re-signings. I like the way Matt Reed plays, and I would like to see him used in a little bit more of a role, but I don't think he is a guy that's a priority signing. Next year it looks like things are going to get awkward for the Flyers a little bit more. You got Laterra, Wayne Simmons, Laterra, Wayne Simmons, Raffi, Jordan Wheel, Scott Lawton, all due contracts next year. For the defense, Brandon Manning, Johnny Oduya are unrestricted free agents. Robert Hagg is a restricted free agent. Hagg will definitely get tendered an offer. Brandon Manning, he'll test the market, but I think inevitably he comes back to Philadelphia. I think they like the role that he had there. Goaltending situation, of course, they're all just waiting on Carter Hart here in Philly. I think Elliott's probably your starter going into next season. Peter Mrazek is a restricted free agent, and they will probably not offer him to come back. So I think Elliott starts, and they just kind of string Carter Hart along until he's ready to come up, and then once Carter Hart gets there, it's his job to lose. But again, with this, with the way Philly is built, they are built to be a competitive team for years to come, and they've got a bit of cap space available that if they needed to go out and make a splash move on the defensive end, they could look to bring somebody like a Carlson in, even though you got Gostisbehere probably playing top line minutes on the right defense, with Provorov developing into a nice top pairing as well. But yeah, Philly's got tons of cap space. They're already a competitive team, already ready to win now, and I think that they can make a move in free agency, maybe bring in a starting goaltender to kind of put them over the top. Okay, so that's a look at the top 3 teams in the division, and we will continue the series later with the remainder of the Metropolitan Division, and we'll take a look at the Blue Jackets, New Jersey Devils, Carolina Hurricanes, New York Islanders, and New York Rangers, and see what they need to do to improve and make this Metro Division just a little bit more competitive. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment below as to what you think these 3 teams should do to improve for next season. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.